It's time for a quick Oregon Coast real estate market update. A lot has changed. If you haven't been following the market in the last few months, we got a 52-week low for rates. Buyer's agent agreements are now required in order to tour homes. I'm going to cover those very briefly with you. So if you haven't seen those before, you're going to get to see what that looks like. And then I'm going to cover the most recent stats for the Oregon Coast so we can really get a feel for what the market's been doing lately. Stick around. Welcome back to the channel, Living on the Oregon Coast. I'm your host, Seth Marchant, licensed real estate broker in the state of Oregon and Washington. Or if you're new to this channel, we show you what it's like to eat, sleep, play, all the pros and cons of living on the Oregon Coast. And if you want to see more videos like that, we've got over 100 on our channel covering every inch of the Oregon Coast. Make sure and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this that we released every single week. So a lot of our videos really just show you what the Oregon Coast looks like and what it looks like to live there. There's a lot of drone footage, a lot of driving footage that gets you really acquainted with the area. In this video, we're going to cover the real estate market and the latest stats. We're going to start with, like I mentioned, rates first. So at a 52-week low, what does that mean? 6.27%. Rates had mostly kind of hovered around the mid-sixes on the lower end, all the way up into the sevens for about the past year or so. And we've had a lot of people speculating as to what this is going to mean. You know, a lot of people have been saying, hey, if rates go back down, the market is going to get more competitive, and that's definitely going to be true. That's what I've maintained, especially if we get rates back down into like the fours or the fives. You hear a lot of people saying that a lot of inventory is going to come to market if that happens, making it less competitive for buyers, but I just don't believe that there's going to be enough inventory to do that. I think it's going to be even more competitive, just like it was back in 2020 or 2021. But I will give you a little bit of a contrarian take with rates right now. I am kind of hearing whispers of people thinking that, hey, rates are actually going to continue to go back down. So we don't need to jump on rates just right now on that 6.2, let those lower sixes that we haven't seen in over a year. We don't need to jump on that right now because there's a sentiment out there that rates are going to continue to go down. So I'm hearing from a lot of buyers that they're going to continue to sit on the sidelines. So this might not spur the mortgage rate applications that maybe we would have anticipated in the past year or so if rates got to the place that they are now. So I'm going to guess that this recent downtick with rates actually isn't going to have that dramatic of an impact. I think it's going to have to continue to go down and probably crack 6 down into the 5s to maybe bring some of those people off of the sidelines. Let me know in the comments what you think about interest rates. Where do you think they're going? Is that low enough for you? If you're somebody that's been watching rates closely and thinking about buying a home, is that low enough for you to come up off of the sidelines? All right, let's talk about these new buyer agent agreements. If you aren't familiar, starting August 17th of 2024, so just under a month ago, our RMLSs, our local MLSs, require agents to have this agreement in place before they show a house to a buyer. So these buyer agent agreements actually aren't new. They've been around for a long time. It's just that agents haven't used them very much, us included. We haven't needed to use these buyer agent agreements with our clients in the past, really just mostly because the incentives were so strongly aligned that both parties, us and our buyers, we didn't need something on paper in order to accomplish our goals. But now that is required. So very quickly, I want to show you what this looks like. And we're not going to go through this whole thing. It's about 3 pages long. You know, there's a lot of content in here, but I'm just going to kind of give you the meat. I'm just going to kind of give you what you really need to know with these contracts. Okay, so term. So you will set a term. What's the standard term? Again, these contracts aren't very common, so I wouldn't necessarily say that there is a standard term. If you are looking to compare to something, when you go to sell your house, home sellers have a similar agreement with their agent, their listing agent. They need that agreement. That's always been the case. You've always had to have an agreement when you list and sell your house with the listing agent, and terms generally are for listing agents 12 months, sometimes as low as 6 months. For buyer's agents, it might be closer to 6 months. So we can write whatever we want in these terms. This can be a day if you wanted to just write this term in. That's going to be between us, you and I. But it's probably going to be somewhere around 3 to 6 months, but it's going to be variable. It's going to be case by case. So just know we'll have that conversation. We're going to shape it for whatever is going to work best for both parties, for you and for I. Compensation. This is the important part, right? So compensation, historically, if you don't know, historically, the home seller has dictated the compensation for the buyer's agent, and that was paid out at escrow. So when you close, when the home sells, and escrow is the company that holds some of the funds through this process while the contract is playing out. And so buyer's agents historically had been paid out through escrow, which was funded by the buyer's funding, whether it was cash or financing. That's probably not going to change much. We haven't seen it really change much so far, but where this could change is you could get some sellers that are going to say, hey, I'm not going to offer a buyer's agent commission, in which a buyer may have to pay their agent that commission. They might have to make up that difference. We're not seeing that yet. We don't expect that, but the table has sort of been set for that to happen. So typically with us, what this is going to look like is this is going to be marked right here and then percentage right here, which is typically 2.5%. Some agents might start using fees. This whole lawsuit and some of the changes that come along with this have prompted a lot of discussion about fees, because buyer's agents potentially might not be compensated in some cases. So they might try and recoup that potential for not being compensated by charging fees up front. Could be a fee to show a house, could be a fee to write an offer, any sort of thing that a buyer's agent might potentially do. Some people might be charging fees. We don't have any intention of charging fees at this point. For me personally, I think I went on record saying this before, but I don't want to charge fees. I don't think it's going to be good for either party. I think it's better for both parties if we have some sort of compensation when the goals are achieved for both parties. So in other words, you get a house, I help you get the house. That's when I should be compensated. And the reason why I say that is because there are a lot of scenarios where potentially where buyers could go through this process and never actually end up with a house and having to pay a bunch of fees. So if we think back to like 2020, 2021, there's a lot of buyers that wrote offers but never actually got their offer accepted in a super competitive market. So imagine if you're a buyer and you're having to pay a realtor, say whatever number, $1,000 every time you go through the contract process, and you write 10 different contracts, you're going to spend 10 grand and potentially never even get a home. So ideally, hopefully, in a perfect world, things will continue to play out as they have, and we won't have fees. But that is that you may encounter that with another agent. Non-refundable fees. There is a place here for that as well. Early termination. I think this is an important part right here. Essentially, either party can give notice to the other party and cancel within right here it says 3 business days. Written notice, that is. So in other words, if I don't feel like we're a good fit, if you don't feel like we're a good fit, if either party just doesn't feel good about it, we can write a notice to each other and write a notice to the other person and move along. So these contracts are going to be fairly easy to get out of. Now, you don't need to mark every single line in this contract. You can put as much or as little information in here as you want. If you're an agent, putting more information in there, if you're worried about these things, may protect you a little bit more. And then there's a place for additional provisions where you can basically just write in there anything that's kind of not covered up in here. So again, if you want to tour a house, you will have to have this agreement in place with your agent before you can do so. So if you have questions about this, you can call, text, email, get in touch with us, comment below. If you want to review this with me a little bit more in detail, or you want me to send you one of these contracts, just get in touch. All right, now let's move on to the latest market action report. We're going to run through this fairly quickly, starting with the northern coastal counties. So that's 3 counties up here. The northernmost county, Clatsop County, so think Astoria, Seaside, Cannon Beach, followed by Tillamook County, so think Manzanita, Rockaway Beach, Tillamook, Pacific City, of course, and then Lincoln County, Lincoln City, Newport, Depot Bay, Waldport, Yachats. So northern coastal counties is what we're referencing here. Inventory in months. One of the first things we always look at is inventory. That gives us an idea of how competitive the market is going to be. And you can see inventory in 2024 has been building up. And they say right around the 6 months, meaning when this number gets to 6, if no new inventory comes to the market, nothing else changes, it would take about 6 months to sell that inventory. 6 months is kind of what they say is the number between where it becomes a buyer's market or a seller's market. It's really kind of that's really kind of arbitrary, but it still does lean towards a seller's market for the most part. Looking at trends last month versus this month. So we're in September now, so we're past the busy season. The state of Oregon is going to be true for a lot of states, but probably a little bit more so true for Oregon, where it rains a lot. And, people don't want to move when the weather is poor, so people do try and move a little bit more in Oregon in the summertime. Of course, school, people want to move outside of the school season. So coming into September now, we are coming into our slower season, although on the Oregon coast, it doesn't tend to change that drastically. But we would expect, of course, new listings to be down for August compared to July, which they're down by about 15%. But what tells us a little bit more about the market is what is the market doing now compared to last year. So new listings just a tick up for August 24 versus 23. Pending sales slightly down, closed sales slightly down, sales prices slightly down, and inventory slightly up. So the market is a little bit slower than it was about a year ago. So for buyers, that means that you have in a seller's market, that means that you're going to have a little bit more leverage. Average sales price compared to the previous 12 months up 5.5% at $588,000 compared to $558,000. Now, I will point that out too. If you're not very familiar with the northern coastal counties, the average is going to vary drastically. The average in Cannon Beach, for example, is probably about twice that, whereas the average in Waldport, not going to be half that, but it's closer to like in the 400s. So prices will vary wildly for these counties. I think overall, this average is propped up a little bit by Cannon Beach and Manzanita, which really the most valuable real estate along the Oregon coast. If we subtracted those two, your averages would probably be closer to $500,000. I just say that for people out there that are thinking about buying along the Oregon coast that really don't know prices that well, and they're thinking, $600,000 is actually maybe a little bit higher than I would have guessed for average home prices along the Oregon coast, especially if you haven't been here recently and you're only familiar with the Oregon coast, maybe say 20 or 30 years ago, when it wasn't nearly as vibrant as it is now. So this is a residential sales by price range. So this kind of gives us a feel for where are a lot of the transactions happening. It maybe gives you a little bit better feel for those averages. So you can see a lot of transactions happening in 3 to 400s and the 4 to 500s. So there's a lot of inventory that's going at those ranges. All right, a couple things here that are always interesting to look at and things that people often ask. One thing that people ask is, how much of a discount can I get? Or where do these things actually usually sell? Well, it depends on how the house is priced. If it's priced too high, then of course it's typically going to fall somewhere lower under the sales price where it was originally listed. But this orange line right here for 2024, just right at about negative 2% average sold price change. So what kind of discount could you expect? If everything was equal, all averages, if you're looking at an average house, you could maybe expect about a 2% discount. Scrolling down, this will get really into the nitty-gritty for all of the municipalities if you want to look at those details right here. Again, if you want one of these reports, if you want to see this a little bit more in detail, anything that I'm covering in this video, just send us an email to info@OregonReloTeam.com. All right, now let's get into The next county going from the northern coastal counties is going to be Lane County. If you've watched these videos in the past, you've seen me point out that Lane County is where Florence is. There's about 10,000 people in Florence. Eugene is over here to the east. That makes up the bulk. There's a couple 100,000 people there. That makes up the bulk of the population for Lane County. So these numbers are really more skewed towards the valley, towards Eugene. Don't necessarily really reflect Florence. But I did notice that they have added to the reporting recently Florence. So thank you for that, RMLS aggregators of data, for adding these things in here with some numbers for Florence. If you want some more detailed numbers on Florence, I can create a custom report. It does take me some time to put together, but if you want to know about Florence and you want some more numbers on Florence that you're not going to see in this video, again, get in touch with me and I'll get those over to you. So new listings right now, about as high as we've seen in the last 3 years for Florence. If you're not too familiar with Florence, there's a fair amount of new construction there. If you're looking for new construction, there's about as much there as anywhere else along the Oregon coast. Pending sales right now about as high also as they have been in the past. And closed sales kind of ticking right about where they were in 2022, but quite a bit actually up from 2023. So Florence, average sale price right about the same, but a little bit more activity in the past year or so. That market is probably not going to be a whole lot different, though, than the northern Oregon coast as far as being competitive. Douglas County, this is where Reedsport is, same deal. Reedsport is a little tiny town, way smaller than Florence. And again, most of your population is to the east here in the valley. So these numbers are really not going to reflect Douglas County. Same thing with Douglas County. If you want some more data on that, get in touch with me and I'll put something together custom for you. How about Coos County, where Coos Bay and North Bend are the most populous towns along the Oregon coast, where we've seen a fair amount of inventory in the past. And a lot of people inquire about Coos County because of the inventory. There's so many more options in Coos County than other places along the Oregon coast. And real estate there is quite a bit more affordable than the rest of the Oregon coast. Look at the average sold price over the past 12 months. It's actually down 3%, but $361,000 versus $371,000. Inventory at 3.8 months, down from 4.4 and 5.3, the highs for the summer of this year. But looking at going into the winter time, inventory ticked down quite a bit last year. We're seeing a lot of withdrawals lately. So a lot of people taking their house off the market. Some of the effects from the really crazy market that we had in 2021, where people had maybe priced their house a little bit high, still trying to chase those 2020, 2021 type of numbers, where they don't get those numbers and then they just go ahead and rather than price adjusting, they just withdraw their house from the market. So we've seen that a lot actually recently. So withdrawals, I'm going to expect this number to potentially continue to go down actually throughout the winter. It picked back up in the winter time last year. Rates actually ticked up at this time last year and the following year. So one thing that's going to be different about fall is rates hit their high in the fall of the past 2 years, whereas this year rates are hitting their 52-week low. How about compared to last year? New listings are down 14%. Pending sales slightly up, but closed sales, average sales price down quite a bit, which is also pushing total market time up. So that gives buyers a little bit of a leg up in Coos County. And again, you can see a lot of the transactions that are happening here in the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, some in the $400,000 and $500,000 range. So a lot of inventory. If you're looking for something that's a little less expensive, Coos County is always going to be where you're going to be able to find it. All right, average total time on market, it's as high as it's been in the past 3 years. Again, that gives buyers an advantage, but where are these prices actually falling as far as the sold price change? For Coos County, looking closer to like 2.5%. So again, if you find an average home, what kind of discount can you get on it if it's priced right, if it's not competitive? Maybe about 2.5%. And then finally, Curry County, the king of inventory. If there was one place along the Oregon coast that buyers do have an edge or a pretty distinct clear edge, it might be in Curry County. So inventory ticking up from July into August. Some of these numbers, if you're used to looking at more traditional real estate markets, I understand that some of these markets, inventory going up in the wintertime, it seems kind of funny. But this is not a typical real estate market. So let's really look, though, focus in on what is the market doing now compared to a year ago. Listings are down, sales are actually way down, pending sales slightly up, but closed sales down almost 30%. This numbers probably might be jumping out to you too as well. Average sales price up 38.8%, median sales price 27%. Why are those numbers so big? I'll show you why here in just a moment. Total market time down quite a bit from last month, also a little bit unusual. So there was just a little bit of action in Curry County, which there's not a ton of transactions. If you look at this closed sales, 33. It only took 33 sales to make it a 30% decrease because there was 47 sales from the previous year. So we're not dealing with a lot of big numbers, which is how you can get some of these higher fluctuations. Average sales price change down 5.9% from the previous 12 months, from 469 to 441. So here's what kind of skews some of those numbers. There was a house sold between 1.6 and 1.7 million, and then a house sold between 1.2 and 1.3 million. So what kind of a discount maybe can you expect in Curry County closed sales right now compared to the previous 2 years? Everything's pointing to it being a buyer's market in Curry County. Take a look at the average sold price change, right about where it's actually been for the past 2 years. Ticked up actually slightly, but that puts them right at 3% for July. 7%. February of this year, 7.5%, the lowest we've seen in the past 3 years. You notice there's a little bit more variation on this graph than the other counties that we looked at. So the market's going to be a little bit more unique in Curry County, having more options for buyers. If you're thinking about taking the next steps, if you have questions, again, I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of Oregon and Washington. On this channel, Living in Oregon, we show you what it's like to eat, sleep, play, all the pros and cons, everything you could want to know about living on the Oregon coast. So make sure and subscribe to this channel. Get in touch with us. Hit that QR code if you're watching from TV. That'll take you to our website. You can also find a link to our calendar in the description of this video if you want to schedule a Zoom call. And if this video helped, give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think the real estate market's going to do, or if you have any questions at all. And until next time, take care, everyone.